Hello, welcome to the Ancient Wisdom Academy channel. In this video, I kind of want to talk about the structure and how we're going to do the channel and how all of the things that will be presented here starts from a very specific basis. There are so many voices out there, and there are so many people who have such intense belief. And those beliefs have been fueled by the internet and social media and many things like that. So there are so many voices out there. So the attempt here is to try and anchor the ideas and beliefs about the Bible in fact. Now, people will have their own beliefs and ideas, but at least we can actually approach the ideas of the facts of the Bible and of history and of archaeology, and we're going to bring in philosophy, and we're going to bring in a lot of other ideas that will help anchor our ideas so that we can make a better judgment on what we are actually doing and what we believe. For this, the basic premise is what is called Bible epistemology. Epistemology just means the study of how we get our knowledge. So, Bible epistemology is the study of how we get our knowledge about the Bible. So this is not what we believe. This is not about whether you believe in this or believe in that, but how we came to get the knowledge about the Bible that we have. Why do you believe what you believe? How did you get to the point in which you believe something? Now, the root and anchor of civilization itself is ancient Egypt. And when we look at it like that, we will find a whole new universe that opens up in front of us. Egypt lasted longer than any other civilization on the planet. 3,200 years. That's almost half of Earth's history. This kind of idea, this principle, or this fact is something that we cannot escape. We cannot bypass the civilization that lasted most of Earth's history. When it comes to the Bible, we find a similar idea, and that is the Bible mentions Israel more than anything else. Makes sense, okay? But after Israel, Egypt is mentioned more times in the Bible than anyone else. No one is even close, more than the Canaanites, more than the Greeks, more than the Romans. Egypt is mentioned 748 times in the Old Testament. Africa itself is actually mentioned about 1,000 times, over 1,000. So once again, we are back to the idea that Egypt begins basically everything. Now, in that 3,200 years, Egypt influenced the Greeks, the Romans, China, and even Native America. And we're going to talk about that. Now, the biblical Hebrews lived in Egypt for 430 years. I want to say that again, 430 years. Now, in that 430 years, you have a man born named Moses. Moses writes the first 5 books of the Bible. It is therefore important, crucial, and we cannot avoid that we must start with the work of Moses. Well, we can't start with Adam because Adam didn't leave us anything, didn't leave us a book. He didn't write a book of the Bible. We can't start with Abraham. Abraham didn't write the book of the Bible. The first author of the Bible, the first 5 books, is Moses. So that's where we really need to start if we're going to anchor our ideas into the realm of the factual. What is fact? So here's my question, and this is going to fuel the channel, and that is, when Moses sits down to write, what does he know? One of the things that we're going to find out is that Moses was educated in Egypt. Acts chapter 7 verse 22 says, and Moses was educated in all the wisdom of the Egyptians, and was powerful in speech and in action. This is our principal text for how we're going to launch into the ideas of Bible epistemology. Now, when Moses sits down to write, many times we think that it was his mother or his father, Amram or Jochebed. They were the ones who taught him. Well, once again, let's anchor this in fact. Okay, Jochebed and Aram were both slaves. They were illiterate. They did not know how to read or write. In fact, if they did know how to read or write, there is no books because Moses is the first. Okay, and because of that, we cannot really, truly, factually say that it is Jochebed who is actually giving Moses this knowledge. In fact, what we can say is that if Moses was educated in all the wisdom of the Egyptians, we know where the wisdom of the Egyptians were actually taught at. That means that Moses, like all the pharaohs, like all the princes of Egypt, studied at a place called the Temple of Amen. You might recognize that word, amen. It's the same one that's used in the Bible. So for this channel, what we're going to do is we're going to start with the idea of where Moses' education came from and how that education played into the Bible. By the way, question, what language did Moses write the first 5 books of the Bible? Be careful. When you might say Hebrew, no. We're going to have to specifically anchor this. In fact, the Hebrew language may have existed, but it existed in the context of the Canaanites' language. There is no Hebrew writing system. It did not exist, or shall we say it existed, but in a very, very primitive form. The very first evidence of Hebrew writing comes in something that we call the Proto-Sinaitic script. The Proto-Sinaitic script is usually dated to about the 19th to the 16th century BC. That is locked. If we make that an average, because that's a long period of time, it's about 300 years, but if we anchor that to the average, that gives us the 16th century BC. In other words, the Hebrew or the Proto-Sinaitic script comes into existence about 100 years before Moses sits down to write. The point here is that no matter what you say, the Hebrew script was not in a condition to be able to write a sophisticated text like the Torah or Moses' law. Moses' law contained 613 prescriptions. The Proto-Sinaitic script could not, under any circumstances, be able to achieve that kind of a document. Here is a picture of the Proto-Sinaitic script, and here is also the first evidence that we have of it. It comes from Pharaoh Amenemhotep III from the turquoise mines in Canaan. As you can see here, it's very primitive, it's barely legible, it's barely a script. There's no way that Moses could have written in this script. So we are left with the question, how, or shall I say, what is Moses writing in? And this becomes very important because there are 12,478 Egyptian words in the Old Testament. You can't get around that. It's right there in front of you. It's a fact that the Egyptian words in the Old Testament. So if Moses did not use any of his education, hey, we have a whole lot of Egyptian words and we don't know where they came from. Not unless we accept the idea that Moses is using Egyptian in his writing. Now, we're going to have to define this very clearly about exactly what is going on, exactly and in detail about how Moses is writing the first 5 books of the Bible. Now, I need to remind everybody, Every biblical writer followed in Moses's genre of writing. And all through the Old Testament, it's always talking about the law. And when it talks about the law, it's talking about Moses's law. Even when Jesus came to fulfill the law. So we are talking about Moses's work as the anchor for the Old Testament, the foundation of all of biblical writing. And from this, we will go and we will actually talk about if Moses is using Egyptian words and Egyptian culture and Egyptian principles, what does that mean? It means that we are going to have to take the next step. What's that next step? The next step would be to install an African perspective to understanding the sacred text of the Bible. And for that, we're going to have to we're going to have to revise the way we have approached the biblical text. And once we start to do that, we're going to find out a lot of new ideas, a lot of new understanding that we can actually help in our own personal experience.